The stars looked like bright lines outside the small ship as Gia tried to escape the aliens chasing her. She was scared, but she kept flying the ship, even though she was not a real pilot. She was the last human alive from the peace mission that went so wrong. Gia was born in a small town on Earth where life was simple and good. Her parents were farmers who grew rice and vegetables. She never thought she would end up in space running from scary aliens who wanted to kill her, or worse, make her a slave. The alien ship was getting closer and closer. It was huge and black with red lights that looked like evil eyes. Gia tried to make her small ship go faster, but it was no use. The enemy was too powerful too fast. It was only a matter of time before they caught her. Gia was not supposed to be the one flying this ship. She was just a security guard for the Earth diplomats. Her job was to watch for danger and protect the important people. But now, all those important people were dead, killed when the aliens attacked their meeting without warning, without reason. The ship computer made a loud noise as the alien ship locked onto them with some kind of beam that froze the engines. Gia felt her heart beat faster as the ship stopped. Moving, she knew what was coming next. They would board her ship and take her. Gia grabbed her small blaster gun and stood facing the door. She knew the gun would probably do nothing against the big aliens, but she was not going to give up without a fight. Her training taught her to never surrender even when things looked bad. The door of her ship burst open with a loud bang, and 3 huge aliens stepped inside. They were the Kalu, the most feared species in this part of space. They looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs with 4 arms instead of 2. Each arm had sharp claws that could tear through metal. Their skin was covered in scales that shined like armor. Their teeth were long and pointed like knives. Gia fired her blaster. At the first alien, the shot hit its chest but did nothing. The alien just laughed, a deep, scary laugh that made Gia feel cold inside. The leader of the aliens stepped forward. He was even bigger than the others, with black scales that had red patterns on them. His eyes were yellow with black lines in them like a cat's eye, but much more evil-looking. "Let me see this human who tries to fight us," he said, his voice sounding like rocks being crushed. Gia fired again and again until her blaster was empty. The aliens just stood there taking the hits like they were nothing more than raindrops on their tough skin. Then they moved fast, much faster than things so big should be able to move. One grabbed her arms with 2 of its 4 hands, while another took her weapon and crushed it like it was made of paper. The leader came close to Gia and looked at her like she was some kind of strange animal he had found. "This one is female." The leader said, "She is small, but she fights with spirit. I am Commander Dole. I rule this sector of space in the name of the great Kalu Empire. You are now my property." Human, Gia tried to kick him, but the alien holding her was too strong. She could not move her legs enough to reach him. She was trapped. "You aliens made a big mistake attacking our diplomats," Gia said. "Earth will send ships to find out what happened to us. They will come with weapons and soldiers. You will be sorry." Commander Dole laughed, showing all his sharp teeth. "Earth is far away, human, and your ship sent no messages before we destroyed its communication system. No one knows what happened here. No one is coming to save you." Gia felt fear growing inside her, but she tried not to show it. She had been taught that showing fear to an enemy only makes them stronger, makes them enjoy hurting you more. "What do you want from me?" she asked, trying to sound brave. Commander Dole walked around her, looking at her body like he was checking an animal at a market. "The Kalu Empire collects fighters from across the galaxy. He said we make them fight in our arenas for our entertainment. The crowds bet on who will live and who will die. It is our most popular sport. You want me to be a gladiator?" Gia asked. The commander seemed surprised that she knew the word. "You know of such things on your world?" "We had such things a long time ago," Gia said. "In our ancient history, we moved past such cruelty." "Cruelty," Commander Dole said. "It is not cruel. It is glorious. The strong survive, the weak die, as it should be in all things. Take her to the ship," Dole ordered. "Put her with the other new fighters. We will see if humans are as weak as they look." The aliens dragged Gia through her ship and onto their much bigger ship. It was dark inside, with red lights that made everything look like it was covered in blood. The air smelled strange, like something burning mixed with a sweet smell that made her feel sick. They took her to a room full of cages. Each cage had a different alien inside. Some looked almost like humans, but with strange, colored skin or extra limbs. Others looked like nothing Gia had ever seen before. Monsters from nightmares. The aliens stripped off her uniform, leaving her in just her underclothes. Then they put heavy metal chains on her wrists and ankles. The chains were connected to each other so she could only take small steps. Her hands could not reach above her head. The chains were heavy and cold against her skin. They pushed her into an empty cage and locked the door. Commander Dole came to look at her in the cage. "You are lucky, human female," he said. "We are almost at the arena world. You will not have to wait long before you fight. I will not fight for your entertainment," Gia said. Commander Dole laughed again, that terrible, crushing rock sound. "They all say that at first, but when the choice is fight or die, most choose to fight. We will see what you choose, human. We will see what you are made of." He turned to one of his soldiers. "This one goes in the first matches tomorrow," he said. "Give her no weapons. Let us see how long a human can last against a real warrior." The commander and his soldiers left, leaving Gia alone in her cage, surrounded by strange alien prisoners, all waiting to fight, all waiting to maybe die for the entertainment of the Kalu. Gia sat in the corner of her cage, the chains making noise when she moved. She thought about Earth, about her family, who would never know what happened to her. She thought about the diplomats she had failed to protect. She thought about the unfairness of dying so far from home just so some aliens could watch and laugh. But then she felt something growing inside her, not just fear but anger, and with the anger came determination. She would not die easily. She would not give these Kalu aliens the show they wanted. She was human, and humans did not give up even when things seemed impossible. Gia looked at the chains on her wrists in the dim red light. They wanted her to fight in chains. They thought it would make her weak, make her easy to kill. They did not know humans, they did not know her. Let them put me in chains, she thought. Let them think I am weak. Tomorrow they will learn differently. Tomorrow they will learn what humans can do even when everything is against them. Gia woke up when cold water splashed on her face. She opened her eyes to see two Kalu guards standing outside her cage. One held an empty bucket. The other was opening the door. "Get up, human female, time to fight," one guard said. Gia stood up slowly, the chains on her wrists and ankles making noise with every move she made. She had slept with them on, and her skin was red and sore where the metal had rubbed all night. They took her from the cage and pushed her down a long hallway. The floor was cold. On her bare feet she could hear strange sounds coming from somewhere ahead. Loud roars and cheers like a huge crowd at a sports game. "Where are we?" she asked the guards. "The arena world," one guard answered, "the greatest fighting place in the galaxy. Be honored, human, you will die in front of thousands." Gia tried to remember her training from Earth. She had been taught how to fight, but never like this. Never in chains, never against aliens with forearms and sharp claws, never for her life. The hallway ended at a large metal door. The guard stopped, and one of them looked at Gia. "Through that door is the arena." He said, "You will face a Grath warrior. They are undefeated in 50 matches. You will be given one small knife." The guard handed her a knife that looked more like a small kitchen tool than a weapon. "This is all I get?" Gia asked, looking at the tiny blade. The guard made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are lucky to get anything, human. Most new fighters go in with nothing." Gia gripped the small knife tightly. It was better than nothing, but not by much. The doors began to open, and bright light poured into the hallway along with the deafening roar of thousands of alien voices. "Go fight, die." "Well," the guard said. Pushing her forward, Gia stumbled into the arena, blinking in the bright lights. It was enormous, bigger than any stadium she had seen on Earth. The walls rose up high all around, filled with seats, and in those seats were aliens of every shape and color she could imagine, thousands and thousands of them all screaming and cheering. The arena floor was covered in reddish sand that stuck to her feet. She looked down and saw dark stains in the sand and knew it was blood from previous fights. A loud voice boomed from speakers all around the arena. "Welcome to the 73rd day of the grand tournament," the voice said. "Today we have a new species never before seen in our arena. A human female from the distant planet Earth." The crowd roared, some laughing, some making betting gestures with their many limbs. "She will face the mighty Grath champion Vork, who has killed 50 opponents without a single defeat," the announcer continued. From the other side of the arena, another door opened, and the biggest alien Gia had ever seen. Walked out, it was twice as tall as her, with 6 powerful limbs covered in natural armor plates. Its head was small compared to its massive body, with tiny eyes and a mouth full of grinding teeth like a giant insect. It carried no weapons. Its body was weapon enough. Gia felt fear rising in her throat. The thing was a monster. How could anyone expect her to fight that? But she pushed the fear down. She would not show weakness. High above the arena, she saw a special viewing box where Commander Dole sat watching with other important-looking Kalu. Begin shouted. Commander Dole and the crowd went wild. The Grath warrior charged across the arena, moving surprisingly fast for something so big, its feet making the ground shake. Gia waited until the last second, then dove to the side, rolling in the sand. The chains limited her movement, but she managed to avoid the first attack. The Grath crashed into the arena wall behind her and roared in frustration. It turned and charged again. Gia tried the same move, but this time the creature was ready for her. One of its 6 arms caught her leg as she rolled and lifted her into the air, holding her upside down. The crowd cheered as the Grath brought Gia closer to its grinding mouth. She could smell its breath, hot and rotten like dead things. In desperation, Gia swung her small knife, aiming for the creature's eyes. Her arm could barely reach because of the chains, but the tip of the blade struck one of the small eyes. The Grath roared in pain and threw Gia across the arena. She hit the ground hard, knocking the air from her lungs, but somehow kept hold of the knife. Get up, she told herself as the monster charged again. Gia remembered her training on Earth about fighting bigger opponents. Use their size against them, use their momentum. Her instructor had said, never try to match strength with strength when you are smaller. As the Grath reached her, Gia dropped flat to the ground. The creature, unable to stop its charge, tripped over her body and stumbled forward. Gia quickly got to her feet and jumped onto its back. The crowd went silent in shock as the small human clung to the back of the massive Grath warrior where its arms could not easily reach. Gia saw a gap between the armor plates at the back of the creature's neck and drove her small knife into it again and again. The Grath thrashed and roared, trying to throw her off, but she held on with all her strength. Finally, the Grath slowed its movements, becoming weaker. It fell to its knees, then collapsed face down in the sand. Gia rolled off its back and stood breathing hard, covered in the creature's blue blood. The arena was completely silent for several long moments. Then a murmur went through the crowd, growing louder and louder, until they were all shouting and pointing. Gia looked up at the commander's box and saw Commander Dole standing up, his yellow eyes fixed on her with shock and anger. She noticed a younger Kalu officer standing next to Dole, saying something in his ear. Dole seemed to be arguing with him. The announcer seemed confused when he spoke again. The human has defeated Vork, the champion. He said, uncertainty in his voice. This is unexpected. Commander Dole raised his hand for silence, then spoke, his voice booming through the arena speakers. The human got lucky, he said. One victory means nothing. Bring out the Morid hunter. Let us see how she does against a real predator. A new door opened in the arena wall, and a sleek black creature slid out. It looked like a mix between a panther and a lizard, with a long whip-like tail that ended in a sharp bone spike. Its body was covered in black scales that seemed to absorb light, and its eyes glowed green in its narrow face. Gia gripped her bloody knife tighter and prepared for the next fight, her muscles already aching from the first battle, the chains feeling heavier than before. The Morid hunter circled her, slowly moving like water, unlike the straightforward charge of the Grath. This creature was smart. A true predator, studying her, looking for weakness. Gia kept turning, keeping the creature in front of her, never letting it get behind her. She knew from the way it moved that it was much faster than her, especially with the chains limiting her movement. The crowd was quieter now, watching with interest rather than just bloodlust. They had expected a quick death, but the human had surprised them. Now they wanted to see what she would do next. The Morid suddenly launched itself at Gia. Its claws extended. She tried to dodge, but the chains slowed her down. The creature caught her arm with its claws, leaving 3 deep cuts. Gia cried out in pain, but swung her knife, catching the Morid across the face. It hissed and backed away, green blood dripping from the cut. They circled each other again, both wounded, both cautious. Now Gia felt warm blood running down her arm, but ignored it, focusing only on staying alive. The next time the Morid attacked, Gia was ready. She dropped to one knee, and as the creature leaped over her, she thrust her knife upward into its soft belly. The creature shrieked and thrashed its tail, whipping around and catching Gia across the back, the sharp spike cutting through her skin. She gasped in pain, but held onto the knife, dragging it through the creature's body. The Morid collapsed, twitching in the sand, its green blood soaking into the ground around it. Gia stood up shakily, her own blood dripping from her arm and back, but she was alive. She had survived again. The arena erupted, with noise, some aliens cheering, others shouting in anger as bets were lost and won. Commander Dole stood up again, his face twisted with rage. He had never seen a new fighter survive 2 matches on their first day, especially not one in chains, especially not one from a species thought to be weak. "Kill her now," he shouted, but the crowd booed and hissed. They wanted more. They had seen something rare today, and they wanted to see what would happen next. The young officer next to Dole spoke again, seeming to argue for Gia. Dole finally nodded. "The human has earned the right to live until tomorrow. The announcer said she will fight again in the next games." Guards came and took Gia from the arena, leading her back to her cage. She could barely walk from exhaustion and pain, but she held her head high. The other alien prisoners watched her with new eyes as she passed their cages. They had all expected her to die, but she had survived. She had won. In her cage, Gia collapsed on the floor, her body shaking with exhaustion and pain. But deep inside, a small flame of hope had started today. She had survived tomorrow, she would survive again, and the day after that, until she found a way to escape, or until the Kalu Empire learned to fear the species called human. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Gia fought in the arena every few days, sometimes against giant beasts, sometimes against other slave fighters, always in chains, always expected to die, but she did not die, she won. Her body was now covered in scars from claws, teeth blades, and whips, but each wound that did not kill her made her stronger, smarter, more determined to survive. The guards had stopped talking to her. They now watched her with careful eyes, keeping their distance. In her small cage, Gia had created a routine when she was not fighting. She was preparing for the next fight. She did exercises to make her body strong, even with the chains limiting her movement. Push-ups, sit-ups, lunges, anything she could do in the small space. She also watched and learned. She studied how the different alien species moved, fought and attacked, looking for weaknesses that she could use. She learned which ones had poor eyesight, which ones had weak spots in their armor, which ones tired quickly. The other prisoners no longer looked away when she passed by their cages. Now they watched her with respect. Some even tried to talk to her through the bars, asking for advice on how to survive their next fight. Gia helped when she could, teaching them what she had learned about the arena and its champions. The chains that had once seemed so heavy now felt like a part of her body. She had learned to move with them, to fight with them. She could swing the links like weapons, wrap them around an opponent's limbs or neck, use them to block attacks. The very thing meant to weaken her had become one of her greatest strengths. One night as Gia did her exercises, a shadow fell across her cage. She looked up to see the young Kalu officer, who stood beside Commander Dole in the viewing box. He was smaller than most Kalu, with lighter-colored scales and eyes that seemed less cruel. "My name is Officer Tay," he said in a quiet voice. "I bring your food." Gia stood up, the chains rattling as she moved. "Why are you here?" she asked the regular guards. "Bring the food, officer." Tay looked around nervously to make sure no other guards were nearby. "I wanted to see you up close," he said. "The human who will not die, the one they call chain fighter, is that what they call me now?" Gia asked. Tay nodded. "The crowds chant your name when you enter the arena now. Many come just to see you fight. Some even bet on you to win, which was unheard of for a new fighter, especially one fighting in chains." "Why tell me this?" Gia asked. Tay shifted his forearms, uncomfortable with the conversation. "I am curious about humans," he said. "We were told your species was weak, soft prey animals, good only for entertainment in the arena. But you have survived 27 fights now. No one has ever done that." Gia looked at the young officer, seeing something different in him than the other Kalu. A hint of doubt, maybe even respect. "Humans come from a harsh world," she said. "Our planet tried to kill us every day with storms, Diseases, predators, extreme temperatures, we had to become strong just to survive. But we also learned to work together, to think, to create. That is our real strength, not just our bodies, but our minds and our will. Officer Tay seemed to consider her words for a moment, then said, Commander Dole is not happy with your success. He has special plans for your next fight. What plans? Jia asked. Tomorrow you fight the champion of the Kalu homeworld. Tai said, a warrior who has never lost, who has killed over 100 opponents in the arena, many of them without weapons. Jia felt a chill go through her body, but kept her face calm. She would not show fear. Is this champion fighting in chains too? She asked. Tay made a sound that might have been a laugh. No, he will have full armor and weapons, while you will have nothing but your chains as always. Jia nodded. I understand. Tell me about this champion. What are his strengths? His weaknesses? Tay seemed surprised by the question. You still think you can win? I think I can survive, Jia said. That is enough for now. Officer Tay looked at her with new respect. He is very strong, even for a Kalu. He said his upper right arm is his striking arm. Watch for that. He likes to use a spear with an electric tip that can paralyze with one touch. His lower arms are for defense, carrying a shield and backup weapons. His weakness? Maybe that he is overconfident. He has never lost, so he does not expect to lose. Jia thanked him for the information. Why help me? She asked. Tay was quiet for a moment. The way you fight. He finally said, with honor, with intelligence, even when everything is against you. It is not how we were taught humans would be. Commander Dole says you are just an animal, but I have watched you. I think there is more to humans than we were told. With that, Officer Tay left, leaving Jia alone with her thoughts and plans for the next day. The arena was more crowded than Jia had ever seen it when she was pushed through the entrance the next day. Aliens of all kinds filled every seat, some standing in the aisles, all wanting to see the famous chain fighter face the undefeated Kalu champion. Jia walked to the center of the arena. Sand the chains on her wrists and ankles, now so familiar they almost felt like jewelry rather than restraints. She was thinner than when she arrived, but her muscles were hard and defined from constant fighting and exercise. The crowd began to chant a name over and over. Chain fighter. Chain fighter, chain fighter. The sound echoing around the huge space. Jia looked up at the viewing box where Commander Dole sat, his yellow eyes filled with hatred beside him. Officer Tay watched without expression. From the far side of the arena, a new door opened, one Jia had never seen used before, and the Kalu champion entered. He was massive even for his species, with black scales decorated with gold patterns, 4 powerful arms, each holding a different weapon, a spear, a shield, a whip, and a curved blade. His head was decorated with metal spikes that made him look even more terrifying. The announcer spoke, the voice booming over the crowd. Today we witnessed the greatest match in arena history. He said, our undefeated champion Krev facing the surprising human known as the Chain Fighter. Will today be the end of her unlikely survival? Commander Dole stood up and raised his hands for silence before speaking. This human has lived far too long, he said. Today we will see her broken and defeated by the greatest warrior of the Kalu Empire. There will be no mercy. No quick death, only pain and humiliation for daring to think she could stand against our champions. The crowd roared, some in agreement, some booing the harsh words. Jia realized with surprise that some of the aliens were actually supporting her. It seemed that not all of the Kalu Empire enjoyed seeing the strong crush the weak. Begin shouted. Commander Dole, the Kalu champion Krev, charged forward, his electric spear aimed at Jia's heart. She waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to the ground, rolling under the thrust. The crowd gasped as the spear missed her by inches. Jia rolled to her feet quickly, knowing that staying down would mean death. The champion was fast already, turning to face her again, his 4 arms working together. With perfect coordination, Krev attacked again and again, each time Jia avoided the strikes by the smallest margin. She was studying him, learning his patterns, the way he moved, the timing of his attacks. She made no attempt to strike back yet, only to survive, to learn. The crowd was silent now, watching the dance of attack and defense. Krev growing more frustrated with each missed strike, his movements becoming slightly less controlled, more forceful. After one powerful thrust that missed Jia completely, Krev roared in anger, "Stand and fight, coward," he shouted. "Stop running." Jia stopped moving and faced him directly. I am not running, she said clearly. I am learning. With surprising speed, she charged forward, ducking under the spear thrust and sliding between Krev's legs as she passed. She wrapped her chains around his right ankle and pulled hard. The champion stumbled but did not fall. He turned, swinging his curved blade at Gia, who barely managed to block it with her chains, sparks flying from the metal. On metal contact, Krev swung his whip, catching Gia across the back. She gasped in pain, but used the moment to get closer, wrapping her chains around his spear arm and pulling it down hard. The crowd was on their feet now, shouting and cheering as the small-chained human fought the mighty Kalu champion blow for blow. Neither giving ground. Gia took hits that would have killed most fighters, a slash across her leg, a punch to her ribs, but she kept fighting, using Krev's own strength against him, making him work harder and harder to hit a target that refused to stay still. As the fight continued, Gia noticed Krev breathing harder, his movements slowing slightly. Humans had evolved for endurance, hunting on Earth, running down prey over long distances, until it collapsed from exhaustion. She wondered if Kalu had the same stamina. Gia decided to test her theory. She began moving more, running around the arena, forcing Krev to chase her, taking quick strikes when possible, but mainly making him work, making him tired. After what seemed like hours, Krev was visibly slowing his attacks, becoming less coordinated, his breathing heavy and labored. Now Gia thought now is the time. She charged directly at the surprised champion, leaping into the air and wrapping her chains around his neck, using her body weight to pull him off balance as he tried to dislodge her. She kicked the spear from his hand. Krev dropped to one knee, trying to reach behind him to grab Gia, but she held on, tightening the chains around his throat, not enough to kill, just enough to show she could. The arena went completely silent as the mighty champion fell forward, unconscious but alive. Gia stood over him, her body bleeding from dozens of wounds, but still standing still, fighting. Still alive. She looked up at Commander Dole, who stood frozen in shock, and said in a clear voice that carried throughout the arena, "I am Gia of." After Gia defeated the Kalu champion, everything changed. The arena crowds now chanted her name when she entered. They threw small objects into the arena, not weapons, but tokens of respect, colorful stones or small carved figures. Gia collected these and kept them in her cage. Stories about the human who fought in chains spread beyond the arena. Slaves working in the mines or in Kalu houses whispered about her. The guards heard these whispers and reported them to Commander Dole, who became more angry with each passing day. Officer Tay was now assigned to guard Gia full-time. The commander claimed it was a punishment for Tay showing too much interest in the human. But really, Dole wanted someone to watch her every move, looking for weaknesses that could be used against her. Gia did not mind. She had come to trust Tay more than any other Kalu. He brought her extra food when no one was looking, and sometimes medicine for her wounds, small kindnesses that could get him in big trouble. One night, as the arena complex was quiet, Tay came to her cage and sat outside the bars instead of just leaving her food and walking away as the rules required. "You have changed things, Gia," he said, his voice low so other guards would not hear. Slaves now refuse orders. They talk about freedom, about rights. Some even try to escape, all because of you. Gia looked at the young officer in the dim light. "What will happen to them?" she asked. Tay made a sad sound with his forearms, moving in a gesture she had learned meant regret. "They will be punished. Many will die. Commander Dole has ordered public executions to show what happens to slaves who forget their place." Gia felt sick at the thought of others dying because of the hope she had given them. Perhaps it would have been better if she had died in her first fight. Then at least she alone would have suffered. Tay seemed to sense her thoughts. "Do not blame yourself," he said. "This was always coming. The Kalu Empire has grown too cruel, too hungry for power and blood. Even many Kalu like myself question what we have become." "You could be killed just for saying that," Gia said. Tay nodded. "I know, but I can no longer stay silent. Watching you fight, watching you survive, it has made me think about many things I was taught that now seem wrong." Gia moved closer to the bars of her cage. "On Earth," she said, "many centuries ago, humans also kept slaves. We also thought some people were born to rule and others to serve. But we learned. We changed it. Took time and struggle and pain. But we became better. Can the Kalu change too? Tay asked. Anyone can change. Gia said if they want to, enough. Over the next few weeks, Gia noticed small differences in how she was treated. Some guards would not look her in the eye. Others seemed almost respectful, and she was given better food, cleaner water. Officer Tay told her that many young Kalu soldiers were now questioning the old ways inspired by her continued survival and dignity. In the face of cruelty, Commander Dole noticed these changes too, and they made him even more determined to break Gia, to show everyone that humans were weak, that the old ways were right. One day, he came to her cage himself. "You think you have won something, human?" he said, his yellow eyes burning. "With hate you think because you survive in my arena you have power, you have nothing. I could have you killed with one word." Gia stood up straight, looking the commander in the eyes. "You could." She agreed, "But you won't, because then you would have to admit that you feared me enough to kill me without a fight." Dole hissed in anger. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will face 3 champions at once. No one could survive that. Not even you. Prepare for your death. Chain fighter, it comes at last." After the commander left, Tay came to her cage, his face worried. "He told you about tomorrow?" Gia nodded. 3 against 1, not very sporting. Tay looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned close to the bars. "Some of us have been planning something," he whispered. "There are others like me who think the Empire has lost its way. We want change." "What kind of change?" Gia asked. "Freedom for the slaves, fair treatment for all species, a stop to the endless wars and conquests." Tay said, "All the things you have spoken about during our talks, and how do you plan to achieve this?" Gia asked. Tay hesitated, then said, "There will be an opportunity tomorrow during your fight. When all eyes are on the arena, we will strike." Gia felt hope for the first time in months, but also fear. What if the plan failed? What would happen to Tay and the others who helped him? What would happen to the slaves who might be caught in the fighting? "It is dangerous," she said. "Many could die. Many die every day under Dole's rule." Tay said, "At least this way they die fighting for something better." Gia could not argue with that. She knew what it meant to fight even when the odds seemed impossible. Sometimes fighting was the only choice left. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Just survive as long as possible," Tay said. "Keep all eyes on you in the arena. Give us time to take control of the command center and the weapon systems." "I can do that," Gia said. "I will give you as much time as I can." That night, Gia did not sleep. She sat in her cage thinking about Earth, about her family, wondering if she would ever see her home again, wondering if she would survive the next day. But even if she did not, she had accomplished something important. She had shown an entire empire that chains could not break, the human spirit. The next morning, the guards came for her earlier than usual. They were rough, pushing her along the corridors toward the arena entrance. She could hear the crowd already chanting her name louder than ever before. Commander Dole waited. At the arena entrance, his face twisted in a cruel smile. "Today you die, human," he said. "I have chosen the 3 best warriors from 3 different worlds. None has ever lost a fight." Gia looked at him calmly. "I have heard that before," she said. The commander hissed in anger, showing his sharp teeth. "Push her in." He ordered the guards, "Let the show begin." Gia walked into the arena. The sunlight bright after the dark corridors, the crowd roared when they saw her, some throwing those small tokens of respect. Into the sand at her feet, she looked up at the viewing box and saw Officer Tay standing there with other young Kalu officers. They all touched their right hands to their chests, a small gesture of respect that Dole did not notice. From 3 different doors around the arena, her opponents entered. One was a massive creature made of what looked like living rock with glowing red cracks across its body. The second was tall and thin with blades instead of hands, and too many eyes covering its head. The third was covered in metal armor, only its 4 legs visible beneath the heavy plates. Gia took a deep breath, centering herself. She would not win this fight. She knew that, but she did not need to win. She only needed to last as long as possible, to give Tay and his friends time for their plan. "Begin," shouted Commander Dole. The 3 champions charged at once, coming from different directions. Gia waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to the ground. All 3 collided above her, creating confusion. She rolled away and jumped to her feet. The crowd cheered at the clever move, some standing now to get a better view. Gia used the moment to scan the arena, looking for anything she could use. The sand, the walls, her chains. Nothing seemed helpful against three such powerful opponents. The rock creature recovered first, swinging a massive fist at her. Gia ducked under the blow and ran behind the creature, forcing it to turn its slow, heavy body. The blade-handed alien tried to cut her from behind, but Gia sensed the movement and spun away. For several minutes, she avoided direct fighting, using speed and agility to keep away from her opponents, making them chase her around the arena, tiring them out while the crowd watched. In amazement, no one had ever lasted this long against three champions. Gia knew she could not keep running forever. Eventually, they would corner her, catch her, kill her. But every minute she stayed alive was another minute for Tay's plan to work. Suddenly, the lights in the arena flickered, then went out, plunging everything into darkness. The crowd murmured in confusion. Then emergency lights came on, casting everything in a red glow. Commander Dole stood up from his seat, shouting orders. "What is happening? Fix the power now." Gia saw her chance. In the confusion, she ran toward the nearest wall of the arena. Finding handholds in the rough stone and beginning to climb, the chains on her wrists made it difficult, but she had grown strong during her months of fighting. She was halfway up the wall when alarms began to sound throughout the arena complex. The crowd became panicked, some running for the exits, others shouting questions. Gia continued climbing, reaching the edge of the lowest row of seats, where frightened aliens backed away from her. A voice came over the speaker system, but it was not the usual announcer. It was Tay. "Attention, all citizens and slaves of the Kalu Empire. This is Officer Tay speaking. The control center is now under new leadership. Commander Dole no longer commands here. We declare an end to slavery, an end to the forced arena fights, an end to the old cruel ways." Gia smiled as she pulled herself over the wall into the spectator area. She looked across the arena and saw Kalu guards fighting each other, some supporting Tay. Some loyal to Dole slaves were breaking free of their restraints, joining the fight. She needed to find Tay to help secure the rebellion, to make sure it succeeded. Looking around, she spotted a guard who had dropped his weapon in the panic. She grabbed it, a small blaster, then began making her way through the chaos toward the control center. The revolution had begun, and Gia, the chain fighter, would help lead it to victory, the human who had taught an empire that chains could not contain the strength of those who fought for freedom. Chaos filled the arena complex as Gia pushed her way through panicked aliens, some running to escape the fighting, others joining it, guards shouting orders that no one followed. She still wore her chains, but now also carried a guard's blaster weapon she had taken during the confusion. She needed to find Tay, needed to help secure the control center where he had taken command. If Dole's forces took it back, the rebellion would fail, and everyone who had helped would be killed. Gia followed the sound of fighting, moving deeper into the complex. She had never been in this part before. It was where the guards and commanders lived and worked, far from the slave pens and fighting areas. She rounded a corner and found herself face to face with two Kalu guards loyal to Commander Dole. They raised their weapons, but Gia was faster. She fired her blaster twice, hitting both guards in the legs. They fell to the ground, unable to follow as she ran past. The control center was ahead. She could see it through a large glass window. A big room filled with screens and control panels, with Kalu officers working at different stations. Tay stood in the center, giving orders to others who had joined his rebellion. But between Gia and the control center stood Commander Dole himself, with his personal guard, elite warriors who had crushed rebellions on dozens of worlds. They were blocking the main entrance, weapons drawn, ready to retake the command center and end the uprising. Gia needed to help Tay, needed to warn him that Dole was coming. But how could she get past 10 elite guards and the commander himself? She looked down at her chains that had been her curse for so long, then looked at a ventilation shaft high on the wall. An idea formed in her mind, using a fallen guard's weapon as a step. Gia jumped and grabbed the edge of the ventilation cover, pulling herself up with strength gained from months of fighting in the arena. She pulled off the cover and squeezed inside. The metal tunnel was tight, but she could move through it. She crawled through the dark space, following the sounds from below, hearing Commander Dole shouting orders to his men. "Break down the door. Kill the traitors, no mercy." He yelled, his voice filled with rage. "Save the human female. For me, I will execute her personally." Gia moved faster, knowing time was running out. She saw light ahead, another ventilation cover, this one inside the control center. She kicked it open and dropped down, landing in the middle of the room. Surprising. Everyone. Tay turned weapons raised, then lowered them when he saw who it was. Jia. He said with relief. You made it. No time. Jia said. Dole and his guards are outside about to break in. Tai nodded. We know we have sealed the doors, but they won't hold for long. We need to broadcast our message to the entire empire before they stop us. Many stations have already joined us, but not all. What can I do to help? Jia asked. Tay pointed to a large screen on one wall. We need you to speak to, tell your story to, show everyone what the empire has become and what it could be. Instead, your words have power, Jia. They made me change, they can change others too. Jia nodded, understanding her importance to the rebellion was not just as a fighter, but as a symbol of resistance against cruelty and oppression. She stepped toward the broadcast station as loud banging sounds came from the main door. Dole's forces trying to break through. The young Kalu officer working at the station looked up at Jia. The broadcast is live, he said. The whole empire can see and hear you. Now millions of beings on thousands of worlds. Jia took a deep breath, unsure what to say, then decided to speak from her heart. My name is Jia Kim. She began. I am a human from Earth, a world far. From here I came as part of a peace mission but was captured and forced to fight in your arenas. Wearing chains, you thought the chains would make me weak, make me easier to kill, but you were wrong. She held up her chained wrists so the camera could see them. These chains taught me something important, she continued. They taught me that true strength comes from within, no matter what holds you back, no matter what weighs you down. If your spirit remains free, you cannot be broken. Outside the door, the banging grew louder. Cracks appearing in the metal. On my world, humans once kept slaves too. Jia said we once thought some were born to rule and others to serve, but we learned, we grew. We changed. It wasn't easy. It took centuries of struggle, but we became better. We found a way to live together as equals. The door to the control center burst open. Commander Dole and his guards charging in, weapons ready. Tay and his rebels raised their own weapons, a standoff with Jia in the middle, still speaking. To the camera. This is your chance to change too, she said, to follow a better path. One without slaves, without arenas, without endless wars. Officer Tay and his friends have shown that many Kalu already want this change. They risk their lives because they believe in a better future. Commander Dole pushed forward, his face twisted with rage. Kill them all, he shouted. Especially the human. His guards moved forward. But then something unexpected happened. One of them, a tall Kalu with battle scars across, his scales lowered his weapon and stepped back. I will not, he said. I have watched this human fight with honor while in chains. She deserves better than this. We all do. Another guard lowered his weapon, then another. Soon half of Dole's elite guard stood with weapons pointed downward. Dole stared in shock at what was happening. What are you doing? He screamed. Obey me. Kill them. The scarred guard who had spoken first removed his helmet and laid it on the ground, then placed his weapon beside it. I have served the Empire for 20 years, he said. I have killed on your orders. I have watched slaves die for entertainment. I can do it no more. One by one, the other guards who had lowered their weapons did the same, placing their helmets and weapons. On the floor in front of Jia, a Kalu tradition of surrender and respect, Commander Dole howled with rage and drew his personal weapon, aiming it at Jia, but before he could fire, Tay moved faster, shooting the weapon from the commander's hand. It is over. Dole. Tay said the Empire is changing today. Jia stepped forward, still in her chains, looking at the weapons lying at her feet. The offering of the elite guards. The apex predators of the galaxy had laid down their arms before her, a human they had once thought weak enough to fight in chains. Dole fell to his knees, his power broken, his yellow eyes filled with confusion. How could this happen? He whispered. One human slave. Not a slave. Jia said, a representative of Earth and humanity. She turned to the camera, still broadcasting her face and voice to the Empire. I am not the strongest human. Not the smartest. Not the bravest. I am just one person. But through me you have seen what humans are. What we can endure. What we can overcome. Remember this: if you ever think of making an enemy of Earth, we may be far away. But we are not weak and we will never ever stay in chains. In the days that followed, the rebellion spread across the Kalu Empire like fire through dry grass. Many commanders joined Tay's side, choosing change over the old ways. Others fought against it. But they were increasingly outnumbered as regular Kalu citizens, inspired by the broadcasts, joined the rebellion. Jia worked with Tay to establish a new government, one where all species had rights, where slavery was abolished, where arenas were closed. Many of the former slave fighters became leaders, helping to build the new society. 6 months after the day she had escaped the arena, Jia stood on a landing platform watching. As a ship descended from the sky, it was an Earth vessel responding to the messages Tay had sent out, announcing the new Kalu government and the presence of a human diplomat. The ship landed and the door opened. Humans in uniform stepped out, looking around cautiously until they saw Jia, their eyes widening with surprise. They had thought all members of the original mission. Dead Jia smiled as she walked forward to meet them. Tay at her side, she no longer wore chains. Her wrists and ankles now bare, the scars still visible but fading, a reminder of what she had endured and overcome. "Welcome to the new alliance," she said. "I have quite a story to tell you about chains and what happens when you try to use them against a human."